Hi everyone, how you doing? Alex Trujillo here from FlightScope. Hope everyone is doing well, and welcome to another week of our FlightScope webinar. This week we're going to discuss the FS Golf app with Mevo Plus. I see that there's a lot of questions already on the chat and also in our questions section, so I want to make sure to get through all those. First of all, let's talk about lead times for those of you who are still waiting on your Mevos. Please rest assured that we are working very hard every single day on our production team in South Africa to build these units as fast as we can and get them out to you. If you have any questions on your lead time, please feel free to reach out to us and we can give you a more accurate date on when you should be expecting that. So again, feel free to reach out to us. Today I want to just cover setup of the FS Golf app with the Mevo Plus, and then obviously we're going to discuss a few questions, especially I see the questions about altitude. I have an answer for you guys, and we'll go from there. Before we get started on the apps, so you guys are aware, currently the FS Golf app for the Mevo Plus does work on Android phones and tablets, as well as sorry about that, and as well as on your iPhones. The FS Golf app does work with your iPads. However, it isn't scaled correctly, as you can see, as I have shared with you. I'm using an iPad, so it doesn't take up the full screen. Our developers are working on getting this to full screen, and the next update that you see on the FS Golf app on the store will be to get all the screen sizing correct on the iPads. After that update, the following update will be the changes to the FS Golf app to allow the Mevo Plus to change basically what we would call a limited EO. So you will have the ability to change your pressure or altitude and also your air temperature. So for those of you that are using it indoors, maybe you're in Colorado or in Mexico or wherever you may be, you will have the ability to actually see both numbers. You're going to see your standard sea level number as well as the number of where you are located. And if your devices have cellular connection, you'll also be able to just pull that weather data in from your local weather station, and it'll be done automatically for you. So we are looking to update that. That will be the second update you'll see coming out soon. So let's get started here. As you can see here, this is the home screen of my FS Golf app. First thing that I want to do is obviously I want to connect to my FlightScope Mevo. I am connected to it via Wi-Fi, and you're going to see that it's currently sleeping, but now I got it connected, and I'm going to go into my settings. So for the FS Mevo, or I'm sorry, for the Mevo Plus, we have three modes. We have short, indoor, indoor, and outdoor. Right below that, you're going to have your radar tilts and your roll. One thing to remember on your tilts is that it's very important that the backside of the Mevo, the leg, the kickstand, is fully extended, and that should put your Mevo at roughly about 17 to 18 degrees of tilt. As you can see there, I got a green status on the 17.4 radar tilt. And then your roll, you want as close to 0 or as long as those numbers are green. Radar setup, so if I click in there, this is where we can have the ball distance. Obviously, we recommend 8 feet, so you have 7 to 9 feet is what's recommendation on the app. We do recommend 8 feet for full swing. And then now you have the addition of the tee surface height. So in the scenarios where you're hitting off, let's say, a golf mat, like in our studio, for example, we have a golf mat and then the Mevo's on the ground. Now I can adjust and say, hey, I'm actually hitting off a 1-inch mat so that the Mevo can take account for that. We also have the target alignment, which I'll show you here. You're just going to be looking at a wall, but there's your target alignment, so you can get your unit aligned, as best as possible to the target. This is obviously very useful outdoors. So when you are aligning the unit, just make sure that you have the golf ball and the target in line with that red line. I'm going to pause there and take some questions, and then we'll continue in the setup. So first question is, says, without measuring face to path, how is the Mevo Plus calculating or measuring spin axis? So because it is a radar, and we can see basically through the golf ball. So just so you guys know, indoors, we're using that metallic sticker to actually magnify the signal for the radar, especially because of the distances to the net. So we can actually see how that golf ball is tilted, or the wings of the golf ball are tilted. Outdoors, because we're seeing it for a much longer period of time, we can also track that, and that's just done through the Doppler radar signals. It isn't a calculation, it's actually a measurement. And we don't need to track basically the face or the club to understand what the axis of the golf ball is doing. Then we have, when can we change elevation setting for indoor practice? Need that feature ASAP. So for Keith, for your question about the indoor practice and changing the elevation, as I said before, that will be the second update that will be coming out shortly, and our developers they're currently working on that as we speak. Obviously, there's some code that they have to build to get it in there, but you should see it in the near future. Alrighty, I think that answers those in here. Let me get one more. Ross Miller says, do you have any timeline on those updates? I know that the update for the scaling on the iPad, that's going to be in the very near future. I'd say in a couple weeks. And then they're going to be working on the limited EO for Mevo Plus on the FS Golf app. I also did hear that we are going to be allowing the Mevo Plus to connect to our very popular VX app. And again, you will have the availability to have the limited EO on there as well. That is not ready. That's also being worked on, but you'll basically have the options of using either the FS Golf app or the VX app. Okay, so we're going to continue here on our setup. Next thing we have is power management. Very important. The cable and the charging block that is supplied with the Mevo Plus is extremely crucial to maintain the proper operations of the unit. The charging block has specific amperage that it provides the unit. If you change that charging block for whatever reason, it could give a surge to the unit and actually fry the internal boards. I'm going to change the focus here. So it is important that you maintain that charging block and that cable. If you would like to use a longer cable or a different charging block or some type of external battery pack, please contact our support team and they can fill you in on what we would recommend. I do know that we have some battery packs, for example, like for outdoor use, that even have a solar panel on the back of it, so you can actually charge the battery, the external battery, while you're even using the unit. So it's really nice, and our support team can help you guys with that. So currently the unit is set to a sleep timeout of 120 seconds, and then you have your option to sleep timeout while charging. So that's just for power management, obviously, if you want the longevity of the unit. Measurement units, you have the ability to customize this to whatever unit you use, whether it's imperial or metric or scientific. Then we have data blocks. Now, the data block section is important because this is what will appear when you're recording a video. And if you want to share that video to one of your social media platforms, or maybe to text it to a friend or a coach, these are the parameters that will be shown on those blocks. And you have the option of selecting one block all the way up to 6 blocks. So let's say for me, for example, I want to share my carry distance, I want to share my club speed, I want to share my ball speed, which aren't that impressive, but they'll do. I want to share my angle of attack, I want to share my smash, and maybe I want to share my spin. I can customize it, drag and drop. Now we have trajectory charts, and this gives you the option of seeing the trajectory start and end point from either the left or right side. So for example, if I like to see the trajectory start on the left side of the screen, you see it here, or if I want it inverted, I have the option of changing that. So some people like it either, one way or the other. So data margins. So data margins is interesting because it allows a user to now take a specific data parameter and really hone in on, a certain area or a certain grouping. So for example, let's say I'm working on my 7-iron carry distance. So I can come in here, I can hit create new, or I can hit edit, and as you can see, I have limits. So I have my lower limit being 160 yards and my higher limit being 165. So if I hit a shot and it is within those limits, I will get a green data parameter for carry distance. If I'm outside of those parameters, then I would get a red indicator. So it's really good for when you're practicing. You can just hit shots, look down, and just by looking at whether it's green or red, you know, okay, I'm in the zone or I'm not. So you know, you can come in here and actually set every single club or every single yardage for your data margins. And I think that's a really cool feature. Then we have the club type. So the club I'm going to be starting my session with. And I'm sorry, I'm going to go back in there here. I can actually edit any club. I can also add a new club. So you can customize your bag. You can have more than one driver. You can have, you know, 5 7-irons, whatever's in your bag. So maybe you have more than 14 clubs. Balls, same thing. You can name your ball. You also have the option of, under ball type, you can select range ball. So again, up to you. Video settings. So this is where you have the option of changing, you know, am I going to use the front camera or the rear camera? Am I going to use normal or slow-mo? And again, the slow mode is based on the device that you're using. And then your post and pre-triggers. We set them to 3 seconds before impact and 3 seconds after. If that's too long of a video for you, you can just come in here and dial that down. So I can say 2 seconds before, 2 seconds after, and now my videos will be 4 seconds instead of 6. Text to speech, also a really cool feature. So, you know, you're out on the range or maybe you're at home just working on a yardage. You can actually turn your text to speech on, and then you can select what data parameter you want the FS Golf app to read out to you. If you have your headsets on, or your Bluetooth headphones in, or your AirPods, or whatever the case may be, this will go into your speaker. So you can just hit balls and get your information. Weather conditions. So currently it is locked because I am in an indoor mode. If I were to switch to an outdoor mode, I go into weather conditions, you can see that it updates. And this is what's really cool. My iPad has cellular data, so it will pull from the local weather station. So I also have the ability of setting my hitting direction. And I can do that based on using the map, or I can use it based on using a compass. And then I have my wind speeds and wind directions, which are being pulled from the local weather API. So if you have cellular data, this is a great way to just store the data and information so that later you can go back and say, okay, you know, on this day, this is what the information was. Surface type used for the roll calculation. You have soft, medium, or hard. So obviously you can change that depending on where you're playing throughout the country. User profile, this is just your basic information. Radar information, this has my AVR and my DSP versions, my firmware. I also have the availability of updating my firmware. This radar in particular needs to be updated, so I would just hit check firmware update, and then it would update. Make sure that when you're doing a firmware update, do not interrupt it, do not exit out. That can corrupt the firmware, and then it can cause you to have issues, non-tracking issues. All right, so let's answer a few more questions here, and then I'm going to go back to the session. So we have a question. By the way, if anyone wants to come on screen and ask a question, just let me know in the chat, and I'll bring you. If you got a camera and a mic, or you're using your phone, I can bring you on screen, and I'd love to have you in person, and we can have a little chat. So does the battery need to be completely discharged before recharging, and what's recommended when the unit is not in use for a length of time? So you don't have to run it all the way down. However, with any type of technology, it is recommended that from time to time you run it all the way down and then recharge it. What is important to remember is that it's kind of like the phones. Like when your phone dies, you can't just plug it in and turn it back on. It takes a little bit before it has enough power to boot the processor back up. Same thing with the Mevo Plus. If it completely dies, when you charge it back in, you got to give it a few minutes for it to get some type of battery percentage in the cycle before you can turn it back on. So if you do run it all the way down, just remember that if you run it all the way down, it's going to be a few minutes before you can turn it back on and use it. It's a good question there. We have a question here from Tony Brown that says, I tried FS Golf on Android the other day and it uploaded my environmental data, including altitude, etc., to myflightscope.com. That's great. I wasn't aware of that. So obviously they did that with the Android platforms. I just think that within the FS Golf app, you won't see that. So what it's probably doing is there's something in the back end that's pushing that. Again, I've never seen this, so I can't confirm that, but I will. Let's see here. Yeah, most of the questions are about the elevation, which I said that is currently being worked on and will be available. The other thing to remember is that the elevation feature, typically in the indoor environment, you're obviously using a ballistic model, and that model is using standard sea level conditions. So once we started getting the request that, hey, I am using it indoors because this product is really designed for simulation and being used indoors a lot. When we started getting the request that, hey, we do need the ability to change the altitude, especially for people in higher environments, we sprung into action and we told the developers, hey, we got to make sure that we add this into there. So we're going to basically give you a little bit more and add you a limited EO. So it's not only altitude now, it's also going to be pressure. Because for those of you that maybe didn't watch our EO webinar when we did it with the X3, altitude affects obviously ball flight, but temperature is a huge variable in that math per se. But you can, for example, you can be in Colorado at 5,000 feet, and if a pressure system moves in, it actually changes what you would call your air density or your actual what it feels like. So you could be at 5,000 feet, but really it's 3,000 feet, let's say, actual, or you could be at 5,000 feet and it's actually like it were 7,000 feet. So that's why the pressure side of things is important, and that's what we're gonna do for you guys. I have another question here. It says, does the unit update firmware automatically, or is there a place in the settings where we need to do that? So it will automatically do a firmware update, because once you turn on the app, it always looks to see if there's an update. But if you go into the settings and you scroll down into the radar information, you can see right here where it says check for firmware update. That'll run a check and then it'll do a firmware. So I can do it on this one. I know that it needs a firmware update, but it takes a little bit, so I don't want to take up the time in the webinar for that. All right, so now let's go into a session. Oh, wait, hold on a second. I got 12 questions now. Let me answer some of these. So here's a question from Steve Singleton. It says, how does the radar eliminate the T when using the driver as the T flies through the air? So we can actually, through the signals, we can see the T, and the software is designed, the radar is designed to know that what is a T, and obviously to ignore it. Because the ball and the club are moving much faster than the T, it's also very easy to see that in the signals, and also the shaping of it. So it's not hard for us to do, and it is eliminated. As a matter of fact, I've seen raw data samples where you can actually see like butterflies flying in front of the radar, or you can see like a car moving in the distance. So the radar does see all those things, but it's programmed to know to specifically look for the ball and the club. So here's a question from Peter. It says, Android, if I have data and Wi-Fi on the Mevo Plus, will not connect the Android devices ready to connect when the network connection improves. If I turn the data off, then it connects anywhere around this. So I think what you're saying is, Peter, is that with your cellular data on, you're having connection issues. I'm not aware of this. Best thing to do would just be call support. You can contact them at support@FlightScopeMevo.com, or you can give them a call, 407-614-5909, and that is extension number 2. And one of our support team members can help you there. Alrighty. So let's continue going through here. So I'm going to go into a session. So in reviewing a session, so here is, I had 4 shots in this session. My coworker, Daniel. hitting some 7-irons in our cage here. So I'm going to just play the video so you guys can see this wonderful golf swing that produces many hooks, or duck hooks. So you can obviously have the option of replaying the video. You can scroll back to a certain position. What's really cool is now I can draw my lines. I can do my circles. I can take the pencil and draw a big hook this way. So, and then when you're done, you can save it. And then now what I really like is I can share this. So right from this device, I can go into my social media platforms, or I can go view more options. And then I have my options on the bottom here that I can also use: Skype, Google Drive, Message. If you have WhatsApp, whatever the case may be, I can share it right to there. So I would send this to Daniel, but he's seen his swing more than enough. There's a shot 2, so I just tap on it, goes to the next shot. And again, what's really cool is having the data blocks. Remember that in the data blocks, you can customize to see the different data parameters. You can have 1 block, or you can have 6 blocks. I can remove or edit on the bottom right in the 3 dots. Now from here, I can go into my table screen. So again, I can scroll through my shots. Down at the bottom, I have all my data parameters. Okay. If you recall, we had set a data margin. I'm going to go turn my data margins on, and now you can see that my carry distance was within the 160 and 165, so it showed up green. If he was outside of that distance, then it would go to red. So just a really cool feature for just when you're practicing, to not have to look through everything, just look at the colors. Carry distance, club speed, ball speed, vertical launch angle, spin rate, smash factor, height, flight time, angle of attack, spin loft, horizontal launch, spin axis. I told you he hooks it. Roll, total, lateral, and then your shot type. It's a little lenient. It says draw. I think it was a hook. Now, so the shot type is obviously dependent on where it lands laterally. So how much spin axis the ball gets. Then we have our trajectory. So you have your top view, and again, you can switch this from left to right. We're obviously seeing the ball starting from the left and going to the right. You have your side view, and then you have your pretty cool 3D view. And there you can see your trajectories. I see that they added a little basket of balls. We can bring the data in from the side, and you can scroll through that data while you're viewing your different views, or I'm sorry, in the 3D view. If I go back to the top view, then I can go to my groupings. I can go to groupings per club. So if I did a gapping session, I went, wedge through driver, I can actually see a color coded for each individual club, obviously as long as you tagged it properly. And then you can see that on here. So great for doing like gapping sessions. The tagging of clubs, it's not that the Mevo Plus needs you to tell it that you're hitting a 7-iron or an 8-iron. It's just more for your purposes of collecting data that, hey, you hit a 7-iron, you hit an 8-iron, you hit a 9-iron, just so that you can go back and see your grouping screens. The only thing the radar needs to know specifically is it an iron, a wedge, or a wood, and it's just because the head shapes are different. That's all it needs. There's your side view. Obviously, this is scalable depending on your shot types. And then we have our table screen. So in the table screen, you're going to have all your shots. You can scroll through all your data. You can hit the play and actually see your video. On the bottom of the screen, you're going to have your average as well as your deviance for each individual parameter, which I think is cool. And then in the settings, you have the ability of actually shifting your columns. So, whoa, I just saw others. My colleague Gregor's answering some chats. So that is the basically the Mevo Plus app. Let's take some questions. Again, anybody that wants to come on screen and ask some questions, let me know if you guys want to join me. It gets lonely in here by myself. See, we have some more questions in the questions columns. So we have a question here from Steve Bennett that says, are the stickers required for outdoor use with a net? So that is considered in the software per se is considered an indoor environment. So anytime that you're hitting the golf ball is going to be is going to hit something like a net, then it would be considered an indoor environment, and you do have to use a metallic sticker. If you're hitting it on a range, the ball is just going to land, normal, then you would use the outdoor mode. We have, will FS, this question is from Steve Singleton. It says, will FS Golf link the bag setup in myflightscope.com? That's a good question. I know that in other apps you can name your bag per se. I do think that is an addition that they're going to be making. At the moment, the data will link as you send it. So, if you have whatever your bag is set up, that's what's going to go, especially if you add information. But the linking of like naming your bag and things like that, that's an addition that will be done in the near future. I got a question from Rob in the chat that says, are you hiring software engineers? I'm not sure, but I'll ask. Most of them work in Poland. I don't know if you want to move there, but we can ask. You can also, I believe on our website, we have under our support section, we have a section where we post our jobs, and there might be something on there. So I have a question from Eric. It says, how is production going? Production is going good. Everybody is working. We still are limited. I believe that we're still under 30% production because South Africa is in what they call their level 4. And so we are limited on staff, but they are working all the hours that they're allowed to work. They're still under curfew, so that I think from 11 to 5 a.m. They're not allowed to be, obviously in the offices. But anytime that they are able to be working, they're there, and we're running 7 days. So if you want to, a specific answer on your specific order, you can reach out to us, and we can look you up and give you a close estimation date on when you should receive your product. And again, we really, we're thankful for you guys being patient. We know it's been a long process. This whole quarantine thing hasn't been easy for any of us, but we are working really hard to get you guys your products. I have a question here from Ross Miller. It says, is there a benefit to mounting the monitor on a tripod? And if so, what are the recommendations for that? We do not recommend that you mount it on a tripod. We recommend that the radar be on the ground and as close as level to the, level with the golf ball as possible. We do have an adjustment for tee height, not necessarily the height of the tee, just the height of the ground level difference. But that's only 1 or 2 inches. You cannot have massive changes between the radar and the golf ball. So we recommend that it be as level as possible to get the best data. And then we have a question here from Tony Brown that says, I've created a few different clubs in my bag in FS Golf. Is there any way to delete the clubs in that list? I have to scroll a long way to find my clubs I want to select, as I have more clubs, and find a way to delete all clubs. Yes, so Tony, let me show you here. So I'm going to go to my clubs here. So this is my bag. If I go to edit, and there should be a, oops. I see. So within the session there, you can't add it. I have to go into settings. Then I have to go into clubs. And then I have to go to edit. So that is a great question. So I will give that feedback to the developers, because it seems like at the moment there isn't a way to actually remove the club. So good catch. Before, you can actually swipe and it would bring up the delete button, but I think that functionality has been removed. So very good point. I will add it to the developers, and I'll see if they can add it in the next release. So Michael, I see Michael Pitts, you requested information from South Africa directly. You're saying they didn't answer. If you call us or you email us at sales@FlightScopeMevo.com or support@FlightScopeMevo.com, we will give you an answer on your order. South Africa is just dealing with production. They're not really set up for answering, for questions on, you know, time, lead times, or estimations, or anything like that. That's all handled here from the U.S. So just feel free to reach out to us, and we can do that. I'll have somebody contact you after this call to make sure they get you an answer. We have a question here from Chris. It says, my unit will be in the garage that slopes, so the unit will be a couple inches below the mat. Is just rising the unit enough, or do I need to make the level surface? It doesn't have to be level, as long as the mat and the radar are at about the same height. You just don't want to have huge differences, but slight changes like that is not going to affect the radar. Okay, I answered that one. Yeah, so Tony, yeah, so you can only add clubs, not delete them once created. That is true. That was a functionality in the app. I'm not sure what happened there, but we'll get that fixed. Just give you the ability to delete them, because I agree. Once you add a lot of clubs, you don't want to have to scroll that much. We have a question from Greg that says, are the projected shipping dates accurate? Well, Greg, we are trying to be as close to as perfect as possible. Obviously, the situation is very fluid and changing. I believe that once things start to, some of these regulations start to relax, we'll be able to, obviously, the production cycle will be much greater, and we'll be able to get them out to you faster. But we are trying to take into account every scenario when we give you that estimation. The estimation date, we're actually projecting it, we're being conservative and projecting it a little bit longer than what we think. So we hope to have it shipped by those dates. But again, we don't really have control of some of the logistical stuff. So it's tough at the moment, but we're trying our best to take everything into account. Is there a way to see specific FlightScope staff players, Bubba, Rory, Bryson numbers, so we can compare how far off you are to the pros? Yeah. So I mean, obviously there's tour averages, but we can do I can schedule a webinar with some of the players. I had one with Bubba the other day. Not sure if you joined, but we'll do a webinar and just show some of their numbers, and so you guys can see. Obviously, some of them hit it pretty far, especially Bryson nowadays is smashing it pretty good. But I'll get you guys some numbers. It says once you're in the Mac put a response here. Once you're within the golf app, swipe to the left on the club in which you would like to delete. Yeah, I tried that functionality, but it doesn't seem to be working at the moment. So again, we'll check into it with the developers. Alrighty. Here's a question from Tony Brown again. It says, is it better to move or turn the Mevo Plus to align the red alignment marker during the setup, or use the left or right arrows on the alignment screen to move the alignment marker? Is there a benefit to either method? Tony, I'm a big believer in keeping the alignment line on the screen. Let me show you here. I'm a big believer in keeping that line without moving it, or left or right with the arrows, and just physically moving the radar. I just believe that the moment that you start moving those arrows, you're obviously adding a numerical offset into what the radar is seeing. So I'm a big believer of just leaving it where it is on its what we would call mechanical zero. But you have the option of doing that. Is it going to be inaccurate if you move it? No. I just prefer to keep it there in the middle, but you do have the option of moving it with the arrows. Either method works. That's just my preference. So here's a question from Matthew Grimsom. It says, do you think in the fullness of time head data could be added to? I'm guessing club head data. I'm sure people would be happily pay for some kind of modular unit that says. Yeah, so I think you're referring to measuring the club head. I don't think that there's any development plans within this specific model to have club head speed or any type of club head data parameter like that. But of course, technology is always, it's always changing. We're always trying to improve it. So I'm sure that the engineers are looking at some sort of solution. Is it going to be at the same price? I don't know, but I'm sure there will be a solution coming in the future. So for the time being, though, the 16 data parameters is where we sit. I hope it comes out in the near future because that would be a great addition. All right, guys. So yeah, a lot of interaction today on these questions. Another thing, I gave you that support number earlier. That you can call that number. That will reach our sales and support. You can also call the 407-412-9400. That will get you straight into support. So thank you very much for your time. We're trying to bring you guys as much information as possible during these lockdown times. If you guys have any questions in specific or any webinars in specific that you would like us to do, please feel free to email us at sales@flightscope.com, and we'll put it on the schedule and we'll get it out to you guys. We're probably going to go down to one webinar a week, where we do a Q&A and some education. Because we know some of you guys are going back to work and you're going to be a little bit busier, so we'll keep it rolling. We'll keep getting you information. But again, thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being loyal FlightScope customers, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.